What's that? Yes. You can get right here.
Good morning, everyone. We'll just say a word before we begin here. Our condolences, our prayers go out to the Cheney family. Of course, we've had the loss now of former Vice President Dick Cheney. Scripture is very clear. We give honor where honor is due, and someone who gave their life, loved their country, loved serving their country in so many capacities. As you know, Dick Cheney served as Vice President. He served as a Secretary of Defense. He served as a congressman, of course, from Wyoming, and as the youngest chief of staff to any president in the history of the country. And so the honor is certainly due to him, and our prayers go out to the family. This is now day 35 of the Democrat shutdown, and I'll be honest with you, I don't think any of us expected that it would drag on this long. We didn't believe, we couldn't have imagined. It's now tied for the longest shutdown in U.S. history, and we didn't think we'd have to come in here every single day, day after day after day, and repeat the obvious facts to the American people, and to put on display every day what is happening here. Again, it's a split screen. We've talked about the split screen in the country right now. The American people are wise. Ronald Reagan used to remind us you can trust the American people, and we do. And they can see the facts here. They see that President Trump and the Republican Party are delivering real positive results for the American people, delivering on our promises. We passed the Working Families Tax Cut, which is the largest middle-class tax cut in American history. We signed into law as part of that. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime. Big savings for those on Social Security. We strengthened Medicaid with popular, common-sense reforms that strengthens the program. We've improved healthcare access in rural communities, and we have reduced premiums. There's a lot more work to be done there. It's the Republicans who are delivering those reforms. We restored American energy dominance. We got the border crisis solved. We are reducing and handling the crime crisis in city by city around America. And we have restored peace through strength. That is on one side of the screen. Over the past 34 days of this shutdown, the Republicans have been the only ones working in good faith to end the shutdown and get everyone paid and get the services flowing again. And we have voted that way 14 times. That's on one side of the screen. On the other is the Democrats. And it's such a stark contrast. Because in the last 10 months, the only thing that party has accomplished for the country is to shut down the federal government and cause this pain. The past 5 weeks have been painfully clear that Democrats are not interested in doing their most basic job. And we explained here yesterday, all of this is motivated by one thing and one thing alone. The Schumer shutdown was never about health care or any other policy that they claim now. They can't even decide amongst themselves what it was about. Some have said it's the Seinfeld shutdown because it's about nothing. But I'll tell you what it is ultimately about, truly, and this is something that can be demonstrated and everyone here knows it's true. As I summarized yesterday, the Schumer shutdown was never about health care or any other policy. It is about fear. It's about fear. Right now, the Democrats fear political retribution from the far-left activists in their party more than they fear the consequences of keeping the government closed for weeks on end. They fear political retribution from far-left activists more than families going hungry and workers missing paychecks. That is a fact that they are demonstrating day after day and vote after vote. It's gotten so bad for them that even their traditional allies are losing patience now. The head of the Teamsters Union had a blunt message to Democrats a couple of days ago. Quote, "American workers are not bargaining chips. Senators need to stop screwing around and pass the House-passed clean short-term funding bill," unquote. And it's not just the Teamsters, as you know. AFGE, the largest union of federal workers, had the same plea. And so did the National Association of Air Traffic Controllers, the Coalition of Airline Pilots Association, the NetJets Association of Shared Aircraft Pilots, the Allied Pilots Association, Southwest Airline Pilots Association, the New York Steamfitters Union. It goes on and on and on. These organizations have traditionally backed the Democrats for decades. That has been true. They represent tens of thousands of working Americans, all these associations together. And now they're calling on the Democrats to drop their partisan demands and reopen the government. Stop inflicting this pain on the American people because you are afraid of your far left base. And how did the Democrats respond to all this? They're gaslighting the American people and even their own base. The truth is the Democrats have lost touch with working Americans because they've simply stopped listening and stopped serving them. And every few months, after leaning harder into their woke identity politics, they commission an expensive study to try to figure out why working class voters have completely abandoned them in the Democrat Party. Here's a recent finding. This is a left-leaning research group that surveyed 3,000 working class Americans. This was published in Politico November 2nd. Quote, this is the finding: working class voters perceive Democrats to be woke, weak, and out of touch, too focused on social issues, and not nearly focused enough on the economic issues that impact everyone every day, unquote. And here's the kicker. They also said working class voters, quote, can't name what Democrats stand for other than being against Donald Trump. Well, good luck with that as a message to the people. Of course, you don't need a months-long study to tell you that Democrats are woke and weak. You simply need to look around. As the Democrats continue to pander to their radical base of affluent progressives, President Trump and Republicans are building a new multi-generational coalition of voters that is grounded in common sense. Since November 2024, Republicans have welcomed record numbers of Hispanic and Latino voters, Black and African American voters, Jewish voters, union workers, young people, all these different segments of the population, and they came in large numbers. People everywhere can see clearly who's fighting and voting here every day and delivering for them. And I'll say this clearly to every hardworking American in any place who's missed a paycheck, anyone who has been made to suffer because the services, the health services you rely upon, or the food and nutrition supplement for your family, anyone who is hurting, you have a home in the Republican Party. You have people here who are elected by their constituents to come and do their job, and they do it. They're voting to support you, to make these programs available, to ensure that the people in need have them. And the Democrats, by stark contrast, are doing the exact opposite. With federal workers entering their 5th week without a full paycheck, Democrats ought to be taking a hard look in the mirror. Will they continue to bend the knee to their radicals who run their party? Or will Democrats finally do something to serve the working Americans they abandoned long ago? As we said here all along, and every day we come in and tell you the same thing, Democrats made the deliberate choice to shut down the government, and only Democrats can put an end to this madness by making the deliberate choice now to reopen the government. Today is a big election day. In these blue states, we certainly hope for a surprise, but I mean, it won't be a big surprise if the front runners, the Democrats, the radicals, win some of these elections. We're watching New York City very closely, as you all know, and so is Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. And they're terrified that the Marxists are taking over their party, and the evidence today may show that that is true. Now, until Democrats decide to do the right thing, we expect working Americans to continue to flee the Democrat Party and find a home with the Republicans, and we welcome them with open arms, and we'll keep fighting for them every day. And one of the people who is fighting every day and doing an extraordinary job in the cabinet of this administration, this historic administration, that has accomplished more in the first 9-10 months of an administration or Congress than arguably any in history. We have our former colleague and our dear friend who's on the side of American workers, and we'll address that today, Labor Secretary Lori Chavez DeRemer. We're happy to have you. Madam Secretary.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Speaker Johnson, and it's certainly an honor to be here at the Capitol on behalf of this administration and this president. Speaker Johnson, I want to say thank you to you and my former colleagues. House Republicans did their job more than 5 weeks ago by voting for this continuing resolution. How do I know this? Because I did the same thing 5 different times when I was a member of the House. It was one of the easiest votes for me to take because you do not play games on the backs of the American people. It's the fundamental tenet that they elect you to do, and that is to keep the government open. That's exactly what I did. And now Democrats are not choosing to represent their constituents and the American people. What does a shutdown do? 42 million Americans are going without their SNAP benefits. Air traffic controllers are working around the clock to keep Americans safe, without sleep, without paychecks, and they are required to do their job. Small business owners are not getting $4 billion in small business loans to keep their doors open. How can the economy continue to grow? We are losing $15 billion a week in GDP because of this Democratic shutdown. American workers are suffering. Prominent unions are speaking out. Our friend Sean O'Brien, as the speaker said, was at the White House begging Senate Democrats to open up this government. American workers, 1.3 million Teamsters, are represented by Sean O'Brien. He mentioned they cannot be used as political pawns. But you know who's being used as political pawns? The Teamsters by these Democrats. Because they will go to the Teamsters and they will ask them for something, and now they're not going to answer that call. They are begging them to open up this government to grow this economy. Other unions as well, manufacturing, building trades, industry-specific skilled trades. It's the workforce that I represent as the labor secretary. Every single day we show up to make sure that they have the tools that they need. We have sent out over $86 million to our respective states in order to upskill and reskill the American workforce. The future of the American economy is on my shoulders, on this administration's shoulders, and the Democrats have stopped all the momentum that we have put in the last 9 months. Registered apprenticeships, the future workforce. Not only are we hurting the current workforce, it's the future workforce. We are trying to educate our young people. We're trying to register 1 million active apprentices across this country. We had almost 250,000 registered, and now that has come to a screeching halt. We're trying to educate our young Americans on AI. Pilot approaches for workforce challenges in AI, the uncertainty. American workers deserve to know that they are going to have a job in this country, and the Democrats have chosen to play those political games. But many of our efforts have been stopped. 13 times they had an opportunity to say yes, just like I did, just like my colleagues have done. Enough is enough. President Trump has done his job. Not only has he leveled the playing field with tariffs, not only has he welcomed great trade agreements, he has worked most recently with South Korea and Japan to bring hundreds of millions of dollars back to this country for the shipbuilding trades. I have been working around the clock to make sure that we can protect our national security for this country, and now that has also come to a stop. We are hurting American workers. We need to get them back to work. We need to grow this economy. We need to get their paychecks back in their hands so they can provide for their families, put gas in their cars, pay their mortgages, turn on their lights. I'm talking to all of you American workers out there. We're here for you. We're going to continue to fight through this shutdown, and I am begging these Democrats to show up, do their job, and open up this government. 35 days is far too long for the American people. Enough is enough. I'd like to turn it over now to my Chairman Wahlberg, Education and Workforce Committee. And again, on behalf of the President, it is an honor to serve him. It is an honor to serve the American people, an honor to get up every single day and do this job for the American men and women of this country who are building back the United States. Thank you.
Well said, Madam Secretary. And I've worn out my voice, Mr. Speaker, over the course of the last 5 weeks all across my district from Lake Erie to Lake Michigan, from Detroit to Grand Rapids, from South Bend to Toledo, Ohio. Getting the message out, the Republicans did what we needed to do to keep this country moving forward. We were willing to negotiate on everything and anything, but do it in a way that doesn't have a punitive impact upon the citizens we are so privileged to serve. And Madam Secretary, we're looking forward to Workforce Pell being initiated and getting more people trained for the workforce for the jobs that we need. And this stutter that's gone on now for 35 days doesn't help us get it up and running well as a result of the One Big Beautiful Bill and what we've done there and many other things for education and the workforce. It's now been over a month since Democrats shut down the government, and the American people are feeling the impacts. Workers and families don't know when they'll receive their next paycheck. Service members and men and women who keep us safe may not be able to feed their families. Air traffic controllers are working double shifts along with TSA, that I greeted last night and thanked for working without a paycheck in sight. These are proud Americans who are working hard to keep our communities running, and the Democrats are making sure they won't get paid. The Democrats are making sure they won't get paid. Did I make that clear? We've tried to do that all across the media networks in Michigan, and I think it's working. Similarly, businesses across the country are facing mounting uncertainty. Groups like the Job Creators Network and National Restaurant Association are raising the alarm about millions of workers and businesses at risk of closing because of the shutdown. And according to the American Hotel and Lodging Association, the economy loses $31 million per day from lost hotel revenues. Virtually every sector of our economy is hurting because of this foolhardy Democrat shutdown. And since the start of the shutdown, more than 4,800 small businesses have been unable to access the Small Business Administration loans. I've sat with some of those businesses. I've heard their concerns. I've heard their desires to expand their business, but they can't get the applications filled out, further restricting businesses' ability to grow, potentially forcing others to close permanently. What's more, this shutdown has disrupted the data that drives the economy. Jobs, prices, paychecks, the data that guides it all has stopped flowing, and that is hurting workers, families, and job creators. In my home state of Michigan, we're losing more than $360 million in economic activity every week, week upon week. That means every week workers, job creators, and communities lose out on chances to thrive as families struggle to put food on the table. But Democrats don't seem to mind. We've all heard House Democrat Whip Catherine Clark's interview describing the suffering of families as leverage to remote health care to illegal aliens. And then there's the Senate Democrat leader, Chuck Schumer, in his comment that every day gets better for us. How cruel, how unfeeling, how uncaring. Clearly, the Democrats are so wrapped up in D.C. politics, they've forgotten what really matters, helping the Americans thrive. Now, labor unions, as the speaker pointed out, who overwhelmingly supported Democrat politicians and left-wing causes, are calling for Democrats to vote for the House Republican-passed clean continuing resolution. We passed it. We funded government. We didn't shut it down. The American Federation of Government Employees, Steamfitters Local 638, Teamsters, and pilots unions are calling for the government to reopen because livelihoods are being crushed. Our nation's children are being impacted too, and I'm concerned about that. Some Head Start programs, some of those small little seats that I've sat in, hearing about what good work is done for these families and kids. Head Start programs, because of the Democrat unfunding of them, will not receive federal grants despite being the only option for many low-income families. That will lead to disruptions that will force families to go without child care as programs face dwindling funds or go without funding entirety. We funded it in the House. The Senate Democrats need to do the same. If the COVID-19 pandemic taught us anything, it's how bad any disruption to a child's life can be. Long-term school closures exacerbated learning loss and caused skyrocketing truancy. How long do the Democrats need to keep our government shut down before they see the real harm they're doing to Americans' children? The Democrat government shutdown has gone on far, far too long. And the longer it lasts, the worse things get for the American people. This is the first time in history, if you might be reminded, the first time in history a political party has shut down the government over a clean CR. The Democrat petty partisanship is hurting workers and families across the country. The shutdown is also showing Americans just how far the Democrats will go to promote their out-of-touch agenda, even if it means holding the American people hostage for more than a month. America's workers, families, unions, and job creators have all spoken. Chuck Schumer, pass the clean CR and reopen the government immediately. I hope the Democrats are listening, at least 5 of them. Republicans have listened and voted to fully fund the government, coming on 15 times as of today. It's time for 5 more Democrats, including my 2 members from Michigan, to vote the same way. For the children, as Nancy Pelosi has famously said. Do it for the children. Do it for Americans. I now am pleased to turn over the podium to a great leader, Leader Scalise.
Thank you, Chairman Walberg and Secretary Chavez-DeRemer. It's great to have you back here in the House. I'll start by joining in with what the Speaker said and extending my condolences to the family of Dick Cheney. Of course, served 8 years as President George Walker Bush's vice president, served in so many other important roles in government, started as a member of this House of Representatives, and lived an incredible life, and we mourn his passing and extend our prayers to the Cheney family. As we look at potentially another vote today in the Senate to try to have a breakthrough to open up the government, let's remember when the Senate votes today, they're not voting on some big, massive omnibus bill, a bill that resolves all of our differences. You know, if you're one of these Democrats, and it only takes 5 to get this government back open, and you're struggling with this decision, do you offend your far left radical base? It's about to elect the new leader of their Democrat Party in Mondami in New York. Or do you stand up for the tens of millions of people around the country who are actually suffering? And if you vote yes today, are you giving anything up? What's in that bill? A clean continuing resolution that violates any of your principles? There's nothing. Again, that bill does not solve our differences. That bill just keeps the lights on. That bill just allows federal workers to get paid for the work that they're doing. Those that have to show up and work and keep our airports open. The air traffic controllers who are working under high, incredible stress in a normal time so that planes can land and take off safely with 150 plus people on each one of those planes, without worrying about the stress that as soon as they get off the job, they've got to go do a second shift as an Uber driver because they can't put food on the table because Democrats shut down the government. Hopefully they weigh that when they cast their vote today. And we see every day, of course, unfortunately, more and more consequences to the suffering Democrats are causing. We know on the SNAP program, 42 million people. And yes, the courts are trying to work with the White House to find ways to move some other money around. But as we know, even if they're able to move money around, it doesn't make that program whole. The only way to make the SNAP program whole is by Democrats opening up the government. It's real straightforward. You vote yes or no. You vote yes because you want to put food on the table for 42 million low-income families. But if you vote no, maybe because you're afraid of some radicals in Portland or San Francisco or New York City, when you vote no, you are taking food off the table for 42 million low-income people, the least among us who need that help. 6.7 million going without the Women, Infant, and Children program funding. WIC program is really, really important, again, to very low-income people who need that help. Democrats have no problem shutting off that funding, causing that suffering, and to use their term, because they think they're getting some kind of leverage. We still don't know what the leverage is for. They're trying to leverage the American people, and they can't even articulate what it is they want. Yeah, $1.5 trillion wish list of crazy items like free health care for illegals, gutting a rural health care fund. Is that really the leverage they want to use the American people for? And deny the WIC funding? 2 million people in the military, 2 million service members going without pay. What do they say to them? Oh, gee whiz, they were so afraid of Mandami in New York that they couldn't vote to pay our men and women in uniform who are keeping our country safe, risking their lives, while their families are wondering if they're going to be able to put food on the table. What a profile in courage. It's gutless. 700,000 federal employees without pay, 670,000 federal workers furloughed, 5.9 million households at risk of losing their home heating services under the HEAP program. You know, we had Secretary Chavez DeRemer talk about opportunities for young people. You know, just want to learn through apprentice programs to get their start in life so that they can go and get a skill, a trade, maybe start their own small business. That's not going to happen while the government's shut down. And if those Democrats vote no again today, ask them to articulate why. What's their answer to those young people? Some 19, 18-year-old kid who just wants to go learn electrical skills, but won't be able to because, why? Because Democrats want to use him as leverage in some game that they can't even explain. And then, of course, we all know all the different groups that have come out over and over. They've not said, let's pass some big sweeping omnibus bill. They've just said, pass the clean CR that the House passed over a month ago. The National Air Traffic Controllers Association, American Federation of Government Employees, Teamsters, Coalition of Airline Pilots Association, Airline Pilots Association, NetJets Association of Shared Aircraft Pilots, Southwest Airline Pilots, additionally, United Airlines, Delta Airlines, American Airlines, Southwest Airlines, have all called for the same thing. It's for the Democrats in the Senate to pass the clean CR. The message couldn't be clearer. Their mission can't be more direct. You just show up today and do your job and vote yes. Doesn't solve all of our differences. It just gives us a few more weeks to start negotiating our differences on so many things, but while not holding the American people hostage. End this madness, Democrats. Open up the government. Our whip, Tom Emmer.
The Democrat government shutdown, spanning 35 days and still counting, is now tied for the longest government shutdown in U.S. history. Chuck Schumer and company are going down in the history books for beating total obstructionists over a nonpartisan government funding bill. Meanwhile, it's hardworking Americans who are being forced to pay the price. Federal workers are turning to local food banks to feed their families. Head Start programs are beginning to close, as Chairman Wahlberg mentioned. Thousands of flights are getting delayed due to staffing shortages. Small businesses that contract with the federal government have already lost an estimated $12 billion. Even unions, as you've heard, which traditionally have favored our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, are begging for them to end their needless shutdown charade. The good news is, I think we've reached the real inflection point. Today is election day in several states, and we're hopeful that after today, the Democrats won't be as concerned about holding the line in order to appease the Kami Mamdani and Omar Fata wing of their party. And maybe, just maybe, at least 5 Senate Democrats will finally come to their senses and join us by passing our clean CR to reopen the government. The ball is in their court. Republicans have done our job. The question is, are Democrats willing to put politics aside long enough to do theirs? I hope the answer is yes, sooner rather than later. The American people deserve better. Chairwoman McLean.
Thank you. And thank you, Chairman Wahlberg and Secretary Chavez DeRemer. It's good to see you again. Thank you for your words of wisdom, but again, here we are today, and I want to be very clear about the consequences of the Democrats' actions. 42 million Americans will lose their SNAP benefits because they voted to shut the government down. Air traffic controllers, TSA agents, and federal law enforcement officers are working without pay because they voted to shut the government down. Democrats have weakened our military, threatened families, and held hard-working Americans hostage. Why? All because they voted to shut the government down. And why did they inflict this pain? Because Democrats wanted leverage. Leverage to appease their radical base with more wasteful spending. And don't take my word for it. They've admitted this countless times. They're not even ashamed of this. And today we'll prove it again when the largest federal workers union called on Democrats to end the shutdown. What Democrats do? They still voted no. When air traffic controllers unions asked them to support the clean CR to make sure that the government stayed open, Democrats voted no. And when nearly 500 small businesses and travel organizations warned the shutdown is crushing them, what Democrats do? They voted no. But the socialist wing of their party wants government-run health care, taxpayer-funded benefits for more illegals, and another $1.5 trillion in wasteful spending. That's what your Democrats want. Enough is enough. We aren't going to let your socialist base call the shots. To every Democrat watching, hear me when I say this. It is time to stop holding the American people hostage. Just because you are being held hostage by your socialist base. End the shutdown. End the pain and suffering for the American people of which you represent, and end it now, please.
All right, thanks again, Mr. Chairman, Madam Secretary. I know you all are busy. We're glad you're here and grateful to have you. Let's take some questions. Front row, front row.
There's been reports of bipartisan talks from senators to reopen the government, to move forward on ACA votes. Are you or other top House GOP members in the loop with these conversations? Are you present in these meetings?
No, not present in the meetings. I know about as much about it as you do. I know there are, we hope, we pray, a handful of moderate and centrist Democrats left among the Democrats in the Senate, where the whole country is counting upon them. I have said here, I do not expect that Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries will ever vote to reopen the government. I don't think that they're willing to face the wrath of the leftist base. They see what's happening in New York City and in their state of New York, and they're terrified by that. I mean, we've made that very clear, and I think the evidence speaks for itself. So we're going above the heads of the so-called leadership, and we are appealing to the consciences of a handful of people in the Senate who want to do the right thing and just stop the pain for the American people. And we pray that today is that day. Maybe tying for the longest shutdown in history is something that they can claim as some sort of success. But it's sickening. It's sickening to see a political game being played. We're not playing a game here. We never were. Back on September 19th, to remind you all again, we passed a clean, nonpartisan CR that's 24 pages in length, had not a single Republican priority on it. Why? Because we did it in good faith, because we didn't want this eventuality to occur. We knew it would be too painful for the people, and that's why we've always done the right thing, as everyone has said over and over. Now they won't, and we all know why. Yes, sir. No. If the Senate passes something, of course, we'll come back. We're running out of clock. Obviously, we put 7 weeks on the clock. That was remember, the bipartisan arrangement that was made between Democrats and Republicans in the House and the Senate, in consultation with the Senate, bipartisan, bicameral agreement that they needed 7 more weeks on the clock. Because once we got to the end of the fiscal year, September 30th, there would be that much more time needed, they estimated, to finish the government funding appropriations process. The Democrats have played games, and we've lost so many of those days now. So if they extend it, obviously that logically makes sense to us. I am not a fan of extending it to December because, let's be frank, A lot of people around here have PTSD about Christmas omnibus spending bills. We don't want to do that. It gets too close, and we don't want to have that risk. Well, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. But too many people have concern. I think putting it into January makes sense, but we've got to obviously build consensus around that. There's some discussion about it. We'll see where it lands. I'm not sure. Scott, real quick. Yeah, Scott.
Mr. Speaker, you referenced the passing of Dick Cheney earlier, who was arguably the most powerful vice president in our lifetimes. Obviously, he had a complicated relationship with President Trump in his later years, as did his entire family. But he served, I think, 3, maybe 4 presidents in the White House and in some of the top roles. Do you have any personal reflections, or did you have any interactions with Cheney as you were sort of coming up in Republican politics in Louisiana? And do you think, are there any plans for him to lie in the state here at the Capitol where he served?
Well, this all, just was announced this morning, so there's not been any discussion about that yet. My interaction with him personally was limited when I was a freshman in Congress, and the 115th Congress came here in January 2017. One of my classmates was Liz Cheney, and we were in the same class. And I think I met her father for the first time with her personally. And of course, I was honored to meet him. At the time, everybody was aligned on the same page on everything. And I, admired what he had done in Republican politics to that point. And I meant what I said when I came up here and began this morning, that even when we have political differences with somebody later in life, you have to honor the sacrifices and the service they gave to their country. We certainly do that for the former vice president, and our prayers go out to the whole family. So, yeah.
You talk about the split screen between what the Democrats are doing and what the Republicans are doing. What about the split screen about the fact that the Trump administration is administering only part of the SNAP program while President Trump is having a gathering party at Mar-a-Lago?
I reject the premise of the question. Let me talk about SNAP. Okay. By the way, the president had an annual Halloween theme party every year at Mar-a-Lago. That's what he went back to as obligatory tradition. And I just discount what you're trying to do there. The SNAP benefit is a very important question. The White House has bent over backwards, as we've recounted here every morning, to make sure that Americans' pain is mitigated as much as possible, reduced as much as possible. So we got the troops paid. They made creative solutions for that. The WIC funding for women, infants, and children. And SNAP came to a legal crossroads because the legal analysis said that you could not use the contingency fund if the underlying fund was not flowing. I've explained that into detail here multiple times. 2 courts disagreed. So what did the president do? In good faith, showing again that he's willing to bend over backwards to help the American people when Democrats are not, he went to the court and said, fine, show me how to do it, because we don't see the path. And so the courts have ordered that. They filed a brief yesterday, or some response yesterday in the court, that they'll give as much as is there. Remember, the contingency fund only has roughly $5 billion, and it costs roughly $9 billion for a month of SNAP benefits. So I think the arrangement is they're going to give half, at least half, to everyone. But here's the problem: it's very complex, is that it's administered through the states, and you have to recalculate all the allocations and how the checks go out. It's not, you can't just flip a switch and do that. It's a lot of work that goes into it. So I can tell you that the president is dialed in on this. The president is trying to protect and cover the American people, as he always does. The president is trying to get the government open again. And the Republicans have voted 14 times to do it, and the Democrats have voted 14 times not to do it, to keep the government closed. That's the story. And I don't know why there's any confusion about this at all. They're going to do it again today. My prediction is the Democrats are going to vote for the 15th time to shut their government down, and they're going to look down their noses at the people who are struggling, who are suffering, who can't put food on the table, who can't pay their bills because they're playing games over here. It is absolutely unforgivable in my view. And I wish more of you would give them a tougher time. Yes, last one.
Are you going to be LSU coach?
A question for the Secretary, if I may. I'm just curious if you can kind of tell us what we know about how the shutdown has impacted the labor market. Obviously, with Bureau of Labor Statistics folks being furloughed, I'm curious what we do know so far about how this has impacted the job market, and if we will really be able to get a full picture, or will it take the shutdown ending for us to be able to get a full picture?
Yeah, thank you for the question on the Labor Department and specifically BLS, the labor statistics, how important those data points are in order for the markets, in order for employers. to understand what the workforce is needed. We are not able to release a lot of those reports because we have those furloughed employees. So once the government is open, we will get right back to work in releasing that. We released one report earlier this month because that was required by law. And the CPI, in order to talk about Social Security checks for 2026, that had to be calculated. So we brought some workers back for that, but we will not be able to release the other data points. As far as the Department of Labor goes, as was mentioned, when we're talking about the SNAP program, one of the other programs that we're definitely concerned about, and we've sent letters out to all 50 states, is unemployment insurance. As delivered by those states, that will be the next thing that we have to be concerned about. If people stop receiving their unemployment insurance, will be another detrimental fact to the American workforce. So that is what we're focused on now. We need this government open. We need to get back to work for the American people. The American workers deserve to know where their next paycheck is coming from, and the American economy deserves the American workers there. So yes, this is impacting the labor force. I would imagine we're going to see more and more things every single day that this government is shut down. It is going to affect the American economy. And so we're working hard at the Labor Department to make sure that we can keep everything running that we can. But right now at this point, we're working off the back heels of us, and we have to do everything we can. So it's important to get as many statistics out as we can, but we haven't been able to do so. So we're working hard for the American people. We need this government open to do so and to continue.
Thank you.
Real quick, do you support ICE raids in districts like Speaker Johnson's district and the Republicans up here on stage in the agriculture and hospitality sectors?
Well, one of the things we focus on is all of the programs in order to support the American people. Certainly, the president has been clear. We secured that border. We're going to continue to work on behalf of this administration to focus on the American people, American first policies, and the American workforce.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What about LSU?
Thank you.